What Christianity does is it gets people caught up in impossible tasks. Like they'll talk about the 7 deadly sins, like one of the sins of the day is pride, or the sin that you have to overcome is pride. Don't be so proud. And what will happen is someone will go throughout the day, he's not proud of anything, and at the end of the day he'll go, oh, I'm not proud of anything, I've conquered the sin of pride. I'm proud about that. Oh wait, oh, there's the pride again. And or for example, let's say lust. You can't have lust. You can't think sexual thoughts about someone of the opposite sex. Of course, that's impossible because what is it like a guy thinks about sex every 6 seconds or something like that. And so what it does is it gets you caught up in all these impossible tasks. And by getting you caught up in these impossible tasks, it makes you feel like you're deficient in some way, and that you will not be able to get into heaven, right? That when you die, you'll go to hell or something like that, because you're deficient, because you can't conquer these tasks. You continue to think sexual thoughts about more than one person, more than the person that you're married to. You continue to be proud. You continue to look at something that someone else has and go, wow, I wish I had that. Oh, what's that? That's a covetousness, whatever. And so that's what it does. And so it makes you think that you have to, that you're deficient in some way, and so you have to pledge your life to Jesus the Christ. And I know it's funny, Christians, Christ is a title. It's not his name. It's like captain or lieutenant. And so Christianity, it's like Lieutenant Anity. It's kind of retarded. And so that's what Christianity does. And the same thing kind of gets played out in human creationism. That is, you have this mythology of the various races of man are identical. Now, that's what hardcore human creationists believe, and that they believe that given an identical environment and identical upbringing, the aggregate races of man, and I know there's no way to totally make it all clear cut, but they're relatively discrete. They believe that when you put these people in identical environments, if you take some sort of random sample or some sort of representative sample and you give them an identical environment, the kinds of people that come out of this environment will be relatively identical, at least a lot more identical than they are today in their behavior. And saying that the vast majority of the gaps in behavior and in income and in all the crimes and IQ, I know a lot of people hate that, but IQ, it's a better predictor of job performance than where you went to school. It is. So, and so that's what that belief is. And so what you have is you have all these gaps that exist, but if you believe that the gap is a product of of environment, a product of built-up racism, or even if you're not even if white people on the whole are not racist, which they're not anymore, which is why newer and more exotic explanations have had to come to the fore, like such as white privilege. It's saying, well, you're not discriminating against people of other superficial morphologies, but you get a job. Most jobs are given to people, based on, word of mouth, or like, hey, this is my son, he's my son, so why don't you go ahead and give him a job, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that kind of thing. It's the good old boys network. Now, obviously, on a free market, if that's inefficient and these institutions are employing inefficient labor, inefficient workers, then they're going to be lose to the firms that do not engage in this kind of nepotism. That is, non-nepotistic firms will be able to hire all this undervalued non-European labor, and these non-nepotistic firms will be able to outcompete the nepotistic firms. So anyone who believes in this stuff about white privilege, well, what the hell are you doing? Start a firm and hire only people of non-Caucasian European descent. If they're undervalued and there's this white privilege going on, well, that's a fantastic business opportunity for you. But of course they don't do that because it's a bunch of crap. So, and that's what this is because people continue to believe that these gaps are a result of environment or a result of intergenerational nepotism. They believe that there's something deficient in their behavior, in how they are treating their fellow man. And so what they end up trying to do, well, not they, when I say they, I mean people who fashion themselves as progressives, these humanist creationists, they say that this gap needs to close, and these gaps need to close. But of course the gaps will not close because they're a product of genetics, predominantly. There's some things, okay, there are some things that are predominantly environmental, but even that, it's a result of poverty. So, and the fact is that, for example, the fact is that a greater portion of black people are in poverty than white people, and people in poverty tend to have certain disadvantages, although less and less so as we go through time. And as a result, that gets expressed as black people tend to have less advantages because black people tend to be in poverty more. Right? That's kind of how that actually works. So because of that, even if you have a purely egalitarian society, that's not going to close these gaps, because that's not even going to close the entire, because there are some white poor people too, right? And so the gap won't close as much as people think. But because people think that it's entirely environmental, that these gaps are entirely environmental, they think that it's a failing of them, or it's a failing of their society as a whole, that these gaps are not closed. And so that's the impossible task, right? That's like one of the 7 deadly sins. I mean, it can't. The gap can't be closed. It won't be closed. It won't be closed until the genes themselves are changed, or we live in some sort of technocracy where all production is done by robots, right? So that's how that is, and that is why humanist creationism is similar to religion, in that it puts forward this impossible task, and because you cannot achieve this impossible task, you are insufficient, and that society as a whole is insufficient, and humanity is wicked. And what is the call to action as a result of this? Well, the call to action is rapid expansion of the state. It's the imposition of the total state. You wicked humans can't do it yourself, and so we have to have the state, which is made up of humans, to do it for you, to enforce equality for you. Right? That is to be salvation. That is to be redemption of the wicked ways of the Euro man, and seeing more and more of the Northeast Asian man, because Northeast Asian man is starting to be is successful as well, and because because there's no difference between the races of man, that means Northeast Asian man must also be doing something nefarious, right? That's the humanist creationist dogma.